Hello, and welcome to our webinar about building and working on effective teams. My name is Dr. Scott LaJoy. I'm an associate professor in the School of Public Health and Information Sciences at the University of Louisville. In my work in the School of Public Health, I study medical decision-making and health communication. Prior to joining the University of Louisville, I had the opportunity to work with the Army Research Institute at Fort Knox. At Fort Knox, our group of researchers studied how teams can be formed and trained to be maximally effective in the field. We closely examined how some of the most effective teams in the military, namely the Special Forces, work so well together. The lessons we learned were then translated and applied to newly formed teams of soldiers in the Army. This was truly a fascinating research experience. After leaving the Army Research Institute, I joined a major research hospital in Kentucky. Here, I was able to continue my observations of effective teams. In this case, we were studying how surgeons and nurses perform so smoothly in the high-stress environment of the operating room. These research experiences, coupled with an extensive scientific literature, have illuminated many of the best practices for building and working on effective teams. In this webinar, it is my pleasure to share with you some of these best practices. Today's webinar will be organized into 4 main sections. I will start by addressing the who, what, where, when, how, and why of teams in team building. In section 2, I will talk about the principles of team building. In section 3, I will present the characteristics of teams and highlight some of the features that are present in the most effective teams. Lastly, I will talk about how team leaders can facilitate team performance. Each section will last approximately 10 to 15 minutes. At the end of each section, I pose thought-provoking questions which I hope you will take the time to answer. Be sure to hit the pause button and to jot down your answers. Some of the answers to these questions can be found in the presentation, and some of the answers will depend on your own experiences. Think about these questions, and generating answers will help you gain the most from your time with this webinar. I also hope that you'll generate new insights and be willing to share them with your colleagues. Let's begin. First off, let's start with the assumption that all work done in public health is done by teams of dedicated individuals. Health promotion specialists working with epidemiologists and health communicators to design new interventions. Community health workers engaging with people from the community to identify and correct health concerns. I'm going to assume that very few things in public health can be accomplished by individuals working alone. For this webinar, we'll use the definition of teams that I've shown on the screen. A team is a group of people, often with diverse backgrounds, knowledge, skills, and beliefs who come together for the explicit purpose of achieving a common goal. Note that in our definition, I use the caveat often to indicate that members of a team bring differing skills and skill sets and knowledge. This doesn't have to be the case. For example, a team of experienced statisticians may share similar knowledge, but their working together as a team allows them to tackle more complex problems than perhaps they could have individually. Teams differ from groups or committees. In the business literature, a group is considered to be a collection of individuals who coordinate their individual efforts, whereas team consists of people who share a common goal and are mutually committed to the goal and to each other. Teams function within a larger organization. The organization has its own overarching mission and vision, and the leaders and managers of the organization often create several independent teams working on separate goals. It's the responsibility of the organization's leaders to ensure that teams have the resources they need to meet their goals, and to assure that each team helps the organization meet its mission. Teams typically are not permanent. Rather, they are formed around a specific goal and will disband once the goal has been met. For future goals, the team may be reactivated as an intact unit or reconstituted with new members. But each team is created for the purpose of achieving a specific goal which can't be efficiently achieved by individuals working alone. High-performing teams have some common characteristics. For one, members of the team feel a sense of belonging to the team. They typically trust and respect their teammates. High-performing teams are psychologically safe places where members feel they can express their opinions and concerns without fear of retribution. Importantly, each team member knows that his or her skills are valued by the team. They know that they were selected for the team because they bring something unique that will enable the team to function effectively. They also know and value the skills of other members on the team. If you know your teammate is skilled at performing a specific task, you can feel comfortable in delegating and sharing the workload. The question of team makeup is interesting. Is it best to have a team that consists of like-minded individuals who share similar skills and beliefs? Or is it better to fill the team with people of differing skills? Should the team be a mixture of introverts and extroverts? Or should all introverts be put on one team and the extroverts on another? The science isn't really clear on this question. What the science appears to show is that teams can be homogeneous or heterogeneous as long as they share a commitment to achieving the common goal. One of the obvious advantages of forming a team is that there are now many people who can continuously scan the environment for threats or obstacles which can derail the team from accomplishing its goal. In a team setting where all team members are empowered to speak up, point out problems, and offer solutions, problems are identified quickly and multiple solutions can be proposed and evaluated. Each team member should be encouraged to participate in the evaluation of alternative proposed solutions. This enables diverse perspectives to be considered as the team evaluates the risks, benefits, and costs of each proposed solution. It is a commonly accepted truth in economics that while wants are unlimited, resources are scarce. This truth is evident in public health, where there never seems to be enough time, money, or people to meet all the demands. Moreover, organizations like health departments are usually very large and have multiple and competing goals. For example, a health department needs to maximize its outreach efforts to the community while also trying to identify evidence-based best practices that require long hours sitting at computers and reading journal articles. And by definition, health departments have to respond to unexpected emergencies and crises that pop up at unpredictable times. This means that at any given moment, a valued team member can be reassigned to a different team or project. Teams have to be prepared to replace team members without advance notice or to go on without them. In the Special Forces, teams plan and practice for all contingencies. They cross-train to the point where all members should know basic medic procedures, know how to operate radio and communication systems, and can take up the slack for a team member who can no longer perform his tasks. If a team isn't prepared to deal with the loss of a teammate, then the progress of the team to the goal is slowed or halted. Contingency planning should be done explicitly and early in the process. Let's pause for a few moments to think about what we've learned so far. On the screen, I show 3 questions that will help you incorporate what I've discussed into the knowledge you already have. Question 1. Why is it important for members of a team to set aside personal agendas and egos while functioning on a team? Question 2. When considering the makeup or characteristics of a team, is it more important to ensure that team members are similar or dissimilar in knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs? Question 3. What are some of the common threats to the performance of teams within public health organizations? How should teams be prepared to meet these threats? When you have answered these questions, unpause the video and continue. In this section, we will discuss the formation and development of teams. The information I present comes out of the management and leadership literature and is taught in business schools around the world. It is equally relevant to Fortune 500 companies and nonprofit agencies. In the mid-1960s, Ohio State University educational psychologist Bruce Tuckman developed an influential model of the stages that a team goes through in its life cycle. His model includes the stages of forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. In the forming stage, individuals come together and begin to learn about the expectations and goals of the team. Typically, they interact with the others on the team in socially appropriate ways, figuring out what each other person brings to the table. Interactions are usually polite and superficial. The more experienced team members begin to model behaviors they want others to exhibit. This is a time when everyone is generally trying to get along with each other. In the storming stage, team members begin to jostle for power and determine where and how they fit into the team. This is often a period of conflict and disagreement. Team members can get upset during this stage. However, usually, as the leader of the team reinforces the common purpose of the team and helps them focus on the team's goal, this stage can effectively help the team become more cohesive. A quote by Robert Chatfield of Outward Bound USA is illustrative of this stage. Quote, "Participants form opinions about the character and integrity of other participants and feel compelled to voice these opinions if they find someone shirking their responsibility or attempting to dominate. Sometimes participants question the actions or decisions of the leader as the expedition grows harder." Unquote. Interestingly, some theorists of team development omit this stage of storming. Some teams may not have the jostling intention and gel together quickly and easily. Other teams may linger in this stage and potentially never leave it. Leadership and teams of emotionally intelligent people can help navigate this stage. Note, I found the quote by Chatfield in a Wikipedia entry on Tuckman. In the norming stage, commitment to achieving the goal becomes more prominent. Members have settled into place and now go about the business of setting expectations and assigning roles. It is here that the unwritten rules of behavior are formed. In the performing stage, the team gets to the business of doing the work to meet the goals of the team. Norms and expectations have been set and roles assigned. Team members are motivated to work. Team leaders are engaged in actively coordinating and motivating the actions of each team member. Problems are identified and solutions generated. This is the most productive stage of the team. Dr. Tuckman later added the adjourning stage to his model. This occurs when the goal has been met and the team disbands. Sometimes, when teams have been very successful at working together, there is a sense of loss that accompanies the breakup of the team. Some team members may even feel sadness and regret that the team is no longer a team. It is important to note that progression through the stages doesn't have to be linear. For instance, a team that has entered the norming stage may be working together well until some conflict about role assignment arises and the team reverts back to the conflict and tension associated with the storming stage. Or perhaps a team member is replaced by someone new and the team has to quickly go through the initial forming stage again. All of these stages are naturally occurring, and it may not be evident which stage a team is actually in, but regardless, it is accepted by most researchers that this is how teams are formed. I'm going to focus our attention for a few moments on the existence of team norms. A norm is defined as the shared knowledge and understanding of members of a team about how others think, act, and believe. Norms are developed to guide behavior and set expectations about how interactions should be conducted. Norms are the unwritten rules of the team. For example, in a meeting, do people take turns contributing to the conversation, or is it okay to interrupt when someone is speaking? Do meetings start and stop on time? Is it okay to eat food during a meeting, or to discuss issues of work outside of the workplace? These are all examples of team norms, and each team will develop its own set of norms. One of the most successful organizations in the history of the world is Google. Google is now a massive company with highly skilled employees who work, usually in teams, to create the internet applications and processes most of us depend upon. A researcher at Google named Julie Rozovsky was given the task to identify what made some teams at Google more effective than others. And so she did what Google does. She gathered mountains of data and analyzed it to find patterns that predicted team performance. She looked to see if all the introverts should be put together on teams, or if a team leader should be appointed versus elected. She asked, are high-performing teams made up of people who are friends outside of the office? She asked if there should be equal number of males and females on the team. She examined the data for evidence about whether teams should follow strict performance guidelines if they performed better than teams that were more organic and free-flowing. She searched the data to see if the best teams were those teams who had only the brightest and best members. After 5 years of the Project Aristotle, in the end, she and her team found very few patterns to predict high-performance teams, except for norms. Teams who were more effective tended to have more clearly defined norms. The roles and expectations for work product and how they interacted with each other were more evident. It didn't particularly matter what these norms were, but rather that they were there. What worked well for one team didn't necessarily work well for another team, or even work for the same team when given a different goal. The norm of equal participation was found to be important. Project Aristotle showed that when each team member spoke roughly about the same amount of time during a team meeting, the team was more effective at problem solving and being creative. Rozovsky's data also showed that when team members had higher awareness of how other team members were feeling and showed more caring and concern for each other's well-being, the team performed better. Social scientists refer to this as average social sensitivity, and teams who are high in this attribute tend to be effective. Team norms that encourage respect and equal participation and high social sensitivity tended to result in higher levels of psychological safety. Psychological safety is a measure of how comfortable individuals are to take personal risks in a team setting. If individuals feel their actions will result in retribution, they take fewer risks. Psychological safety turned out to be very important in Google's research. We'll return to this concept later. I'd like for you to answer a few more questions. When you're ready, hit pause and jot down your responses to these questions. Question 1. Name the 5 stages of team development. Question 2. In your experience working on teams, think of a pattern of behavior, for example, a norm, that made you feel most comfortable and one that made you feel less comfortable. Question 2. Which of Google's findings or absence of findings surprised you the most? Unpause the video when you're ready to continue. The word effective is hard to define. Does it mean cohesiveness and satisfaction of team members? Adherence to deadlines and budgets? Innovativeness and creativity? Accomplishment of the goal? Or is it something entirely else, or a combination of all of these outcomes? Each organization likely has its own definition of effectiveness. Regardless of the definition of effectiveness one uses, there are common aspects of team performance that have been identified. One model of team effectiveness was developed by Bruce Fried of the University of North Carolina's Department of Health Policy and Management. We'll talk through this model. From the figure on the screen, you'll see that Fried defines effectiveness as a mixture of overall performance, meeting goals, for instance, team member satisfaction, the quality of work the team produces, and the sustainability or cohesiveness of the team. He states that effectiveness is a function of how well the team conducts the cognitive activities of communicating, making decisions, and learning, and how well the team leaders facilitate the team interactions. Each of these team processes are influenced by team characteristics, the nature of the task, and the environment in which the teams are situated. Within team characteristics, Fried draws our attention to norms and cohesiveness. For one, he states that norms develop gradually throughout the team's life cycle and are important for the team's success. He says that team members don't have to like or accept all the norms, but they do have to adhere to them. Another aspect of team characteristic is cohesiveness. Generally, we think of cohesiveness as an indicator of how well things hold together. A cohesive team is bonded together, but this doesn't necessarily mean that everyone likes each other. Rather, according to Fried, the attraction is to the task or goal, not to the individuals on the team. Another characteristic of teams that is important especially in public health, teams often consist of a couple of members who have high status. For instance, a medical doctor on a team of nurses, communication specialists, and community health workers might naturally be considered to be of higher status because of his or her advanced degrees. Researchers found that high-status members are afforded more opportunities to talk, their opinions are overvalued, and they have greater influence on decision-making than lower-status members. As a result, the low-status members can be shut out from participating, may feel undervalued, and even intimidated. Unfortunately, when this happens, there can be a loss of good ideas. Fewer alternative solutions to problems are considered, and bad feelings can arise. And some team members who feel undervalued might fail to adequately contribute to the team, an outcome known as freeloading. Team leadership and norms that prioritize equal participation can help overcome status differences on a team. The type or nature of the task is obviously important to how effective a team can be. Some tasks require greater interdependence, and coordination than others. On some teams, members may have a clear understanding of the overarching goal, but are unclear about how individual tasks and smaller goals relate to the bigger goal. The successful team continuously communicates amongst its members so that everyone has a clear understanding of all that is ongoing. Let's go back to our discussion about psychological safety. You'll recall that psychological safety is a measure of the willingness of team members to take interpersonal risks and the beliefs that they hold about the consequences of those risks, particularly when others disagree. Consider a medical team of senior doctors, fellows, residents, and medical students. There's a clear hierarchy on this type of team. Residents and students are indoctrinated to respect the fellows and attending physicians, in part because their continued participation in medical education depends on the input of their superiors. This imbalance of power can potentially create an environment of low psychological safety. The medical student may fail to indicate an error out of fear of retribution. The resident might withhold telling the doctor about something the patient said. In these situations, the psychological safety increases the risk. The low psychological safety increases the risk of harm to the patient and reduces the team's effectiveness. On a team of high psychological safety, however, all team members are encouraged to share their observations, to openly discuss potential errors, and to not fear each other. This atmosphere leads to fewer errors, higher learning, and better team performance. Psychological safety is a norm that should be explicitly set and adhered to by team leaders and team members. One of the most important team functions, and potentially one of the most contentious, is decision-making. High-performing teams recognize the importance of decision-making and establish clear criteria for how decisions are made. For instance, it is predetermined how much time will be spent gathering and evaluating information before the final choice is selected. Teams will know how and by whom the final decision will be made, whether it's the team leader, the majority vote, or a full consensus. This predetermined decision-making norm helps each team member know what is expected of him or her. One of the potential pitfalls of team decision-making is called groupthink. Social psychologist Irving Janis coined this term, groupthink, to refer to the phenomena where team members are too concerned about maintaining harmony on the team that they fail to offer competing alternatives or identify errors in thinking. When a team is exhibiting groupthink, they will act quickly to move to a final decision. Usually the decision is a reasonable solution, but not necessarily the best solution. Groupthink is often caused when strong team members dominate and weaker members don't speak up. Team leaders must take steps to prevent groupthink by encouraging equal participation. Time for some additional questions for you to ponder. Question 1. Does your understanding of team effectiveness mesh with the definitions held by others on your team or the leaders of your organization? How would you encourage psychological safety within a team? What are the consequences of having a member with a strong personality dominate the interactions of a team? Unpause this video when you are ready to continue. I'm only going to spend a few minutes discussing leadership for two reasons. One, leadership is a topic that deserves its own webinar. And two, highly effective teams can be effective despite having an ineffective leader. Team leaders are meant to empower the team to do their work. Leaders provide coordination of the team members, they facilitate communication, and ensure that the team has the resources it needs. Additionally, team leaders work with leaders from other teams to coordinate efforts and assure the needs of the organization are being met. Dozens of different leadership styles have been identified in the literature. Generally, though, leadership can be grouped into authoritarian leaders, democratic leaders, or laissez-faire leaders. Authoritarian leaders are usually very assertive and controlling and will micromanage the team members. Democratic leaders work to promote harmony or coordination on the team and strive for consensus on decisions. Laissez-faire leaders are the opposite of authoritarian leaders, preferring a more hands-off approach. Laissez-faire leaders are often not very involved in the team processes, preferring rather to delegate tasks to team members. Authoritarian leaders can be productive, but often result in narrowly focused solutions. They tend to stifle participation and are usually very dissatisfying to work for. Democratic leaders encourage participation, build consensus, but final decisions are made by the leader. Some believe it to be the most effective style, and there's usually high levels of team satisfaction. However, democratic leadership can lead to inefficiency and time consumption when consensus isn't achieved. Laissez-faire leadership styles are considered to be least effective, as teams can lose direction, have trouble resolving conflict, and there is a tendency for team members not to take ownership, to diffuse responsibility to other team members. Regardless of preferred leadership style, the qualities of a good leader are easy to spot, and importantly, these qualities can be taught. A good leader will motivate team members towards achieving a specific goal by continually and repeatedly communicating the goals of the team. The team leader will encourage all voices to be heard and valued, and will assure that each team member is tasked with assignments that they can perform, and will discourage freeloading. The leader will make sure that the team has what it needs to achieve its goals, including adequate time, resources, and personnel. And lastly, the team leader will demonstrate, reward, and enforce a commitment to excellence and high-quality work. Now for a final set of questions. Why is it important for a team leader to continually remind members of the team's goals? Question 2. Think of team leaders with whom you've worked. What styles of leadership did they display? Which style did you find most effective? And question 3, what is your own style of leadership? Unpause the video when you're ready for the concluding comments. There are only a few evidence-based keys to making effective teams. Teams must be focused on achieving a goal. All team members should be encouraged to participate equally. Norms that promote psychological safety are important, and leaders should empower teams to attain the team's goals. Effective teams can be purposely developed by structuring a context in which they can thrive. They depend on organizational support. Each team depends on an organization culture that values teamwork. There are probably other things that we could discuss, but this should give you a great jumping off point on your journey to building and working on effective teams. Here are some references that you might like to look at. And thank you for your attention. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or comments. My contact information is on the front slide of this webinar. Thank you.